much. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Tech Job Community's first Zoom session of our Master Talk series. My name is Julia Yang, and I am one of the volunteers serving our community and will be your host for tonight's session. So I wanted to first thank all of you for taking the time out of your precious weekend to join us. I hope you will find this webinar informative and useful. So as you may already know, Tech Job Community is a fast-growing nonprofit organization that was recently founded. We provide completely free online platforms such as WeChat, Telegram, and TechJob Go for sharing of current job opportunities. We aim to connect and serve our community from aspiring college students to seasoned business professionals like all of you across various professions and across multiple industries. We have now reached more than 5,000 people located in both East and West coasts of the US. So in light of the rapid growth and increasing needs from our community members, we now offer robust professional development and career enhancement programs designed to cultivate Asian cultures. So in tonight's session, we wanted to talk about executive presence because based on publicly available government statistics, Asian Americans have the lowest chance of rising to management when compared with African Americans, Hispanics, and women, in spite of having the highest educational attainment. This is often referred to as the bamboo ceiling. So for those of you who doesn't know the term, it's basically a term to describe a combination of individual, cultural, and organizational factors that impede Asian Americans' career progress inside organizations. So this is an important topic that is affecting all of us who work our ass off wanting to be in a leadership position one day. So I am very honored to introduce our guest speaker, Joe Kwon, an acclaimed career coach and keynote speaker with over 20 years of experience in corporate America, to speak to us about how to get executive presence to accelerate your careers. If you've heard of Joe's work, he is absolutely amazing and a high achiever. Joe holds a BA in psychology from University of Virginia, a JD from Georgetown University, and lives in New Jersey with his family. He teaches busy professionals how to unlock the 12 super personal skills that elevate your career. Joe is also the host of the Big Lie and Why It Works podcasts. His groundbreaking book, Unlock Your Charisma, which I have read, wrestles to the ground the elusive ability and teaches you how to generate it. And his newest book, Unlock Your Executive Presence, is equally fantastic. You will get a first-hand taste of it in a moment. So one housekeeping item before I hand the stage over to Joe. Since this is a live presentation with Joe, at the very end of the session, you will have an opportunity to ask Joe questions. So please type your questions in the chat box and we'll address them during the Q&A session. Now let's welcome Joe to talk about the code of executive presence. Don't let logic errors waste your time. Joe, over to you.
Thanks, Julia, for that wonderful presentation. Let me just go ahead and share my screen as we get started so people can see the presentation. Okay, can you see it okay?
Yes, we can see it.
Confirm everyone can see it. Okay,
yes.
Great. So, Julia, I love the way you teed this up in terms of the bamboo ceiling and the challenges of Asian professionals, especially in a Western country or a Western sort of business and way of working. And also, I'm really honored to be one of the first speakers for Tech Jobs Community. What you're doing and what I've learned from you and Harvey and the other volunteers, it's very exciting and important work. So I'm truly honored that I get to speak to your audience. Now, I have some really bad news for you, okay? There's a lot of reasons why you may not get the next leadership position or job you apply for, and you will never know why. No one's going to tell you why you didn't get that position. It's like there's a hidden code running in the background, and there's an error in the code, but no one's going to tell you what that error is. So now, no matter what you do, no matter how hard you work, no matter how many degrees you get, no matter your willpower or your motivation, you can't advance. You're just going to keep on getting the same error over and over and over again in the code. So what do you do when there's an error in the code and it's not working and no one tells you what it is? Do you give up? Do you just say, oh, that's not going to work. I give up. I quit. No, that's not what you do. You figure out what that error is so you can move forward, so you can move onwards and upwards. And when it comes to leadership, right, when we talk about the bamboo ceiling and Asian professionals, highly educated, do great on projects, very productive, why aren't they advancing, right? So when we talk about leadership and what that hidden code is, that's executive presence. That is the hidden code that propels you from a doer to a leader. Now, there's a problem though. So that's good news. The good news is, bad news was no one's going to tell you. The good news is, you can figure it out yourself. And I'm telling you it's executive presence. But there's still a problem. And the problem is your bosses are giving you terrible advice, right? They're giving you the wrong advice in terms of your advancing. Think about it. If all our bosses were giving us the right advice, we'd be running all the companies, right? But instead we get stuck, right? So why is this happening? Is it because your bosses don't like you? Is it a discriminatory thing? No. There's a couple things going on. One is they may not even know what it is, right? They may feel like, there's something that's, I'm not really feeling great about it. I'm not sure what it is, but they can't put it into words. So what do? They tell you the stuff that anyone could tell you. Oh, you need to work on your public speaking. You need to be a better team player. You need to collaborate more. You need to understand office politics. That's not the error. That's not the key though. So that's not going to help you. If someone tells you the wrong advice to help a problem, it's not going to help you fix the problem. So you're going to spend a lot of time speaking better, shaking hands, networking, but it's not going to advance your cause of moving up. The other problem is maybe they do know what the problem is, right? Maybe the problem is you don't feel like a leader. No one has confidence in you to lead. We can't put you in front of a client. We can't put you in front of the board. I mean, I don't know how brave your boss is, but I'm not sure I'm going to tell that to one of the people who work for me, that you're just not good enough. I mean, they're probably so scared of the HR reactions and people going to say, oh, you're discriminating against me, right? As a manager, I understand, like, that's a very scary thing, especially if they can't put it in a way that allows them to feel that you will receive it in the way that it's intended with sort of a good spirit, right? So then that's a problem. So now you never really find out what the code is, the code of executive presence. So what is the code? The code of executive presence is, I guess, best described in the definition of executive presence, right? So if you ask someone, what is executive presence? They'll be like, oh, that person just feels like a leader. But that doesn't really help you get more executive presence. So I want you to think about someone in your life or at your work who just, man, they just seem like such an executive, right? Or it may even be like someone on TV or in a movie, an actor or a news person or a politician. Just think about them for a second, all right? Think about how they make you feel, right? Why do you think that they have executive presence when the other person, you're like, I'm not even going to follow them down the street, let alone follow them into a difficult situation? So do you have that person in mind? Okay. So the code of executive presence is encapsulated in the definition, which is executive presence is the ability to inspire confidence that you can lead in a given context. Okay? That's all it is, right? Executive presence means when you're around, people are like, wow, I think Julia, she's the one. Let's listen to her. Harvey, Tao, Chang, whoever, they are the one that we want to follow, right? Because you inspire that in them, right? And that's what executive presence is about. And you will never, ever, ever, unless you're maybe the owner's son or something, you will never, or daughter, you will never get the chance to lead, right? No one will select you from other people if you don't have that quality, right? That quality that like, wow, I think we can follow this person because they will take us to the right place, right? So what allows you to do that, right? That's not an easy thing, right? So you may think, oh, well, what do I have to do? Do I have to talk better? Do I have to make more eye contact? You can read a million articles on the internet and they will not really tell you what you need to do to generate more executive presence. So I've come up to help with 6 degrees of executive presence. These are all qualities where when you have them, they inspire confidence in others that you can lead. Now, don't have time to go into depth with all of them, but I'll just go over each of them. We can talk more about them in Q&A or after the presentation. But I just want to get you a sense, give you a sense of what they each are and why they matter. So the first one is being proactive, right? What does it mean to be proactive? Now think about that person who inspires executive presence for you as we go through this, and see if they exhibit any or all of these traits. A proactive person doesn't wait to see what happens. A proactive person is thinking about what should be happening and is making moves or steps or strategies to make it happen. And if a bad thing is about to happen, they don't wait for the bad thing to happen. They try to maneuver to make the bad thing less if you can't prevent it, right? So imagine you're on a boat and the boat's about, to hit an iceberg, and the captain just says, well, let's see what happens after it hits the iceberg. And then the boat hits the iceberg, and then, the boat starts flooding, and the captain says, well, let's see how much the boat floods before we get in the lifeboats, right? Is that the type of person you want to follow? Is that the type of state of being that inspires confidence that this person should be the captain and leading the boat? Of course not, right? So that captain should say, okay, how do we steer the boat so we miss the iceberg completely, or if we don't, at least there's as little damage as possible. We maximize saving of life. Oh no, we did hit the iceberg. What do we do now? How do we organize? What are our drills in terms of getting people on the life rafts? What is the best way? Who's in charge of that? Let's get them prepared. Let's tell them, John, you're in charge of evacuation. You remember those drills? These are the things you have to think about. We're going to evacuate in about 5 minutes. Get your team ready, right? So that's being proactive. Resolute means when you as a leader or even as a team member make a decision and it's not, let's say it's not popular or it's not really going well, or someone else thinks there's a better idea. Do you just change all the time? Like if as soon as someone says, no, I don't think that's an idea, you say, oh yeah, let's try the other thing. And then someone else says, no, I like your original idea. And you go, yeah, let's go back to the original idea. Can you imagine you're driving down a street, you're trying to follow someone, and then they make a right turn, and then a left turn, and then a right turn, and then they turn around, and then they drive in a circle, right? You can't follow someone unless they are resolute, which basically means they're firm in terms of their decision. Now, that doesn't mean they never change, right? If there's a good reason to change, a good leader will change. But what resolute means is they don't change for just any reason. They change when there's a good reason to change, and they communicate that change and why it's happening to people. Next, we have equanimity, right? Have you ever had a leader who's great when everything's calm, but when things get crazy, they turn into like a monster, right? They start yelling at people, they start blaming other people, they disappear, right? Oh my God, we can't get in touch with Anne or Jim anymore. Where did they go? right? This is an emergency. Where are they? They disappear, right? So equanimity is just a fancy way of saying sort of calm under stress, right? So when that difficult situation comes, what kind of leader do you want? Do you want a leader who runs away or goes crazy, or do you want a leader who says, okay, let's figure out what's going on? And ask yourself, what happens when something really stressful happens and you see someone who's very calm? What effect does that have on you that they're calm, right? And then what effect does you and that person being calm have on the next person, and then the next person, and then the team is calm, and then the company's calm, right? So you can see how executive presence is not just this thing like, oh, you know, this person feels really tall and they talk really well. Like, that's not what executive presence is about. It's about these qualities that help you lead people effectively. Stillness, real quick, that just means that you don't move just to move, right? Let's take, for example, when you're presenting. So I'm presenting to you right now. If I run through all 6 of these too quickly, you won't have a chance to understand any of them, right? There has to be a pause before the action, right? It makes the action more powerful, right? Think about anyone who's getting ready to start a race and they're on the starting blocks or something, right? It's not that they're not doing anything. There's actually incredible power and concentration and intention right before they jump off the starting blocks, right? So stillness is not doing nothing. Stillness is understanding that there are times to act and move, and there are times to be still, right? And that helps you time and have the most energy for when you do need to act. Engaged, that basically means, is your leader engaged with other team members, right? So if you say to the leader, hey, we have a problem on this oil rig, this is not good. Does your leader say, oh, don't worry about it, it's fine, it's fine? Or do they say, tell me more, right? Like, why do you think it's a problem? You know, we tested it last week and there wasn't a problem, but you know, you weren't involved in the test, so maybe you're seeing something that we're not. Tell me more, right? Are they engaged? And what does that tell you about a leader, that they actually listen? So if you have a leader who never listens and you see a big problem, how likely are you to really tell the leader and stick your neck out? I would say about 50-50, right? Because part of you morally wants to say the thing and do the right thing. But then part of you is like, why should I bother, right? They're not going to listen. They're just going to yell at me or punish me for saying it, or you know, demote me. Why would I bring up a problem to someone who doesn't know how to listen, who's not engaged? And the last quality is confidence, right? You can't inspire confidence if you don't have confidence inside yourself, right? Now, confidence is a little bit tricky too, similar to executive presence. It's a difficult term to define and really understand what confidence is, what's overconfidence, or what's too much confidence, right? And confidence doesn't mean talking about yourself or bragging or you know, acting foolishly and volunteering for things that, you know, you absolutely have no ability to do. Like, it's not confident for me to say, you know what, I'll take Roger Federer's place in Wimbledon. That's not confidence. Not that that would ever happen. That's like stupidity, right? Like, why would I even do that? I haven't played tennis since high school, maybe college, and I wasn't even that good, right? Confidence, there's a great definition in this book called the Confidence Code. And the definition of confidence they use is, confidence is purity of action, right? Purity of action produced by a mind free of doubt, okay? Purity of action produced by a mind free of doubt. I love, love, love that definition. It just nails confidence, right? Think about it. When you need to do something, when you hesitate, or you say, oh, I'm not sure this is a good thing, but I'm going to share this with you. Or this may not, you may have thought of this already, but here's what I'm going to say, right? That lack of purity of action immediately makes people think, well, I'm not sure we should listen before you even finish your sentence, right? As soon as you cut your own confidence out by saying, I'm not sure. And most of the time we do that to be polite. Sometimes it's a speech pattern, but that is perceived as not being a pure action versus saying, and you don't have to be rude, versus saying, I have a really important concern. This is what it is. I just wanted to share this with you. Because I feel like you'll understand how important it is, and then you tell them, right? You don't need to put yourself down before you deliver the message. And then produced by a mind free of doubt, right? So that's the purity of action, produced by a mind free of doubt. What does that mean, free of doubt? Does that mean you're always going to succeed when you're free of doubt? No. Right? There's so many times we thought something was going to happen and it didn't turn out that way. Being free of doubt, does that mean I am the best person to do the job? No. All it means is that I can perform at my highest capability possible because I'm not spending a lot of time thinking about am I right or wrong, right? I've already thought, right? And I've decided what's right, and then I just act, I just go, right? And that confidence in and of itself is a skill, right? To be able to act with confidence is a skill. And the reason why it's a skill just as important as public speaking or learning to code or anything else that you consider a skill is because people respond to it, right? Think about how you respond to that executive presence person, right? Think about the way they talk. Think about the way they carry themselves. Do they say, I'm not so sure, but maybe? No, they don't, because they speak and they live and they act with confidence. It doesn't mean they're right all the time. It doesn't mean they're always the best or the smartest or the right person for the job. What it means is they are giving themselves the best chance to succeed because they have purity of action, right? They just act with a mind free of doubt. So to summarize the 6 degrees of executive presence, right? It's all encapsulated in that definition, right? Executive presence is the ability to inspire confidence that you can lead in a given situation. And the reason why this is important is when your bosses give you bad advice, like you need to work on your public speaking, or people don't really feel like you're engaged enough, or whatever it is that they tell you, or you need to get some extra certifications or something, right? That kind of thing makes me crazy, right? What they're really trying to tell you is you need to work on the things that will make me and make the other people who are in the room deciding whether you get the job, whether you get the promotion, that you can do the next job, that you can lead. And until you figure that out, until you are able to cultivate these 6 degrees of executive presence, guess what? Unless your father runs the company, no amount of degrees, classes, shaking hands, kissing babies, none of that is going to help you move to the next level, because people don't have confidence in your ability to lead. People pick leaders to lead. They don't pick smart people to lead. They don't pick the hardest working people to lead. They pick the people who know how to lead to be leaders. And it's always been that way, and it's always going to be that way, to the extent that you can imagine that there is some sort of meritocracy at play. This is what it's about, right? Picking the person who can lead, because we want the company to do well, right? No one wants the company to do poorly, because we all want to have our salaries and health insurance and be able to take vacation, right? All right. So in terms of underrepresented professionals, what does that mean, executive presence, and how does that play out, right? Because it's different, right? When you're an underrepresented professional, whether you're Asian, African American, whether you're a woman, although they're not really as underrepresented, but still they have more challenges than their male counterparts for sure. Or whatever your underrepresentation is, Latino, gay, lesbian, bisexual, transsexual. Executive presence seems to feel a little bit different, right? Like the challenges seem to be a little bit different than if you were in the majority, right? So what does that mean? So what that means is, I call these the ABCs of executive presence. It's a strategy to attack executive presence from the position that we are in of being underrepresented professionals. I love how Julia's stat about how, you know, we are the least likely to ascend to those C-level type positions, right? That just makes me crazy. So the first A is allies, right? When you are about to present or go up for a promotion, you got to ask yourself, who's on your side, right? Is there anyone outside your cubicle or your desk who knows who you are, who will say, no, 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 we need Harvey, right? Is there anyone there saying that for you? And if there isn't, you have a big problem, because Jim over there has like 5 people saying, oh, Jim did this and Jim did that and he's great and he showed this leadership and blah, 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 right? If you don't have allies, you have a big problem, right? And so whether you're about to go into a presentation, whether you're up for promotion, the term I like to use is stack the deck, right? You need more people on your side than the people you're competing with, whoever that is, right? You got to stack the deck. You're not just going to say, well, maybe they have 3 and I have 1 and let's see what happens. No. If they have 3, you better have 6 or 9 or 12, right? Because if it doesn't work after that, then you know that something else is the problem. But you can't go against 3 with 1 and say, I wonder what happened. No, no, no. You have to stack the deck, right? Because you don't have the luxury as an underrepresented professional of people naturally gravitating to support you, right? It's just a fact of the matter. Does that mean you can't? No, it just means you have to be aware. You have to work on those relationships. So when you're sitting at your desk, not talking to anyone, guess what? You're not making any allies, right? When you're helping people, when someone doesn't ask you to do something, you volunteer to do it. When you send someone a useful article, when they come to you for advice and you give them double what they asked for, you are making an ally, right? So it's important for your executive presence and your leadership to have allies. Second, Bravo. What Bravo basically means is you have to already see yourself in the position. You have to already identify as that. There's this Scottish chess champion, Jonathan Rowson. I learned this concept from something that he wrote about. And he basically said, if you want to be a chess master, you'll never make it. You'll never make it. You have to choose. You have to already decide that you are a chess grandmaster. And then you will eventually attain that. So what's the difference, right? The difference is when you say, I want something, right? What is that feeling? You just see everything that's missing, right? You see that I didn't start early enough. I don't have money for coaches. Maybe I'm not as smart enough, or my visual acuity is processing is not as good as the next person. All I see is lack, 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 lack when you want something. When you are something, right? You see things missing, but you see it in a different light. You see, okay, this is not right because I am a chess champion, right? All the other chess champions have coaches, and I don't have a coach because I don't have enough money. But it's not an option. I have to have a coach because I am a chess champion. So now what is my behavior? My behavior is not to say, oh man, this really stinks. I have an obstacle. No, my behavior is to work a second job, bribe, cheat, steal with the coach, make them my coach, right? Whatever it takes, I am going to get a coach because in order to be who I am meant to be, that chess champion, I will have a coach. And every other thing that happens to me that I see, I filter it through what I'm supposed to be doing as a chess champion because I don't have a choice. I am a chess champion. I don't get to decide to sleep in late and not watch all the chess matches and study. No, I have to do it because I've already decided I'm a chess champion. It's not optional. So it's the same thing with executive presence. You can't say, oh, it'd be great to be the chief financial officer, the chief data scientist. You have to say, no, 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 I am the chief data scientist. And you start living it today. And you do all the things. Oh, you don't go to any conferences because your company won't pay for you? Guess what? That's not an option. You have to find the money. You have to convince your boss or spend your own money to go because guess what? All the chief data scientists and future chief data scientists are at this conference, whatever it is, right? I'm a lawyer. I'm not a data scientist, so I don't know which conference it is, but it is not optional because you have already identified that you are a chief data scientist. So the last thing I'll go over before Q&A, and I'll hand it back to Julia, is this concept of the code of authenticity, right? As an underrepresented professional, something funny happens when we try to be authentic. Think about the last time you were authentic, right? Did people say, wow, that's so wonderful? Doesn't always happen. I'm Korean. If I go to work and I heat up some like kimchi jjigae at work because I'm authentic, they are not going to be happy with me. They're going to be like, Joe, throw that in the garbage. You can't heat up that Korean food in our white company. You can't do that. That's terrible, right? Or what if your natural inclination to be authentic is to be more respectful, right? The more Confucian way, and to listen. Right? So when leaders are there and you listen and you don't talk a lot, whereas your counterparts are all talking and shouting and talking over each other and you're being authentic, right? That's not your nature. And then what happens? Your boss says, Julia, you really got to get in there because you don't even seem like you're interested, but you are interested, right? You're being authentic, right? So there's a problem here. And my son recently started learning Python like a week ago. So we've just been playing around with it. And I asked him to write this very simple code for me to explain the code of authenticity, right? Because it can be very difficult to understand. There's like a little squiggly line on the slide. I don't know if that can be removed. Looks like a scribble pen or something. So there's a code of authenticity. And what that means is when you understand this code, your authenticity is more powerful. Whereas if you don't understand the authenticity code, you may have problems similar to what I just described. So what's the code, right? So this is some very simple code that my son wrote for me, right? So there's two things happening, right? It's not just about being authentic. It's about having connection too. So what do I mean by connection? Connection just means you know me, you know who I am, we have something, I'm not just some random guy, Joe, right? So here's the thing. A lot of times people use authenticity almost as like, I don't have to care about anyone else, right? I don't have to connect to you, you don't have to connect to me. I get to be whatever I want to be, and that's okay because I read in a book or in a Google article that authenticity is important and it's a superpower. No, it doesn't work that way, right? If you don't have connection with people, authenticity is a liability, right? If your authenticity is a 1 and your connection is a 0, then authenticity is a liability, right? So again, let's say I start at my job and I decide, hey, I want kimchi jjigae for lunch, and I heat it up. Guess what? The office is going to hate me, right? because I'm some new guy and I bring this stinky food in and I start heating up, like, what's wrong with this guy? He's so like inconsiderate, you know, right? And then his breath smells, you know, like, God, use some mouthwash after you eat that stuff, right? So that is a perfect situation of authenticity being a liability. It doesn't even have to be that extreme, right? It could just be you like this team so much, or you know, you're from this region of India and someone else is from a different region of India, and they don't like it, right? Or it could be your gender or whatever, right? If people don't feel connection to you, you will be punished for being authentic. Because why? They don't need to feel anything towards you. So what's the alternative? What is the code? What is the proper code? If you have connection, right? If you have authenticity plus connection, right? So connection is full, it's a one, then authenticity is an asset. But you have to have the connection in order for the authenticity to be an asset. So let's use the same example that I go into work, and let's say everyone at work, they know me really well, right? And I become a leader in the organization. And I say to, you know, I talk to someone and I say, you know, hey, you know, you want to try some Korean food? I say, yeah, you know, let me try it. And then so I say, all right, on Monday, I'm going to bring in some kimchi jjigae. We're going to try it. And let's send out an email to people just to let them know like what's going on and if they want to try. And then it smells a little bit, so tell them we'll light some candles afterwards and we apologize, but you know, we're really excited and please come try it too if you like, right? So then we send out the email, the guy comes, I heat up the kimchi jjigae, it smells, and he says, wow, that's an interesting smell, right? And then they taste it, right? Because we have a connection, right? And they say, oh, this is wonderful, right? Can I get the recipe for this? Did your wife make this? This is wonderful. And then someone else comes in and says, well, hey, what's going on, guys? I got the email. You know, that smells, you know, not that bad. You know, let me try some of that. I'm kind of hungry. My husband forgot to pack the lunch today, right? When you have connection with people, your authenticity becomes an asset because they can see like, wow, this person is real, right? And they want to learn more about you. But if you don't have the connection, don't assume that just because you're being authentic, people should just all fall to the ground and say, oh, it's so wonderful. You're being so authentic, Tao. I just want to tell you how great it is that you're doing all these things that annoy me, but you're authentic, so it's okay, right? It doesn't work that way. So I hope this has been helpful. I want to hand it over to Julia for a little bit of Q&A. I'm not sure if any questions came in, but please let me know if any of this makes sense to you, if any of it doesn't make sense to you, if there are more questions you have, if there are areas that you wish we could still cover. Would love to take any of your questions.
Thank you, Joel. Thank you so much for such an interesting talk. I really enjoyed, and I have to say your ABC really resonates with me, and it's mind blowing because I recall, you know, my company, they used to do like potluck, you know, as a cultural exchange thing, and one dish that I brought in the past was called more. I know a lot of Chinese people would know what that is. It's like a black mushroom kind of thing. And at that moment, like I didn't know how to translate this into English because a lot of people were asking Julia what it is, you know, like how does it taste like? So I literally like quickly Googled it. And then I know that, oh, it's grow from the tree. So, and it's type of fungus. So I told them, oh, it's a type of tree fungus, you know, it tastes like mushroom and blah, blah. And people were like, oh my God, tree fungus, I'm not going to try it. So, you know, the code of authenticity really, help all of us to understand that, you know, you need that connection in order to make people interested in your culture and in what you have to, you know, bring to the table. So it's just a little example. Okay, so we're now gonna take questions from our virtual audience. Again, if anyone has any questions, I'm sure Joel will be very pleased to answer them. So please type in the chat box so I can see them. Okay, I see Jim at the beginning of the session, commented that he thinks that Indian American already cracked that code. So yeah, we've heard a lot of, stories about Indian Americans who, ascend to a leadership position so much more than, like the I guess like East Asian, like Chinese, Korean, Japanese, and especially in like big companies. So I don't know if Joe has any, thoughts in that.
Yeah, I mean, not specifically with regards to Indians, although what I would say is that's a great observation, and it's probably something worth considering what aspects of executive presence they have that may be lacking in more East Asian cultures or ways of doing business. So I know, I have a lot of Indian friends in my company, and some of them seem more like a Satya Nadal, right? And some of them seem more like an East Asian, right? So I fully believe that the ones who have that more executive presence are the ones who end up becoming the Satya Nadals and the other high-level Indian leaders. So it's not the color of your skin, or it's not even the country you come from or the culture. It's really how you conduct yourself to lead and to be chosen to lead, because they were all chosen individually based on things that they did and how people felt about them, not because they were Indian and not East Asian. But that is just a great observation. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add that, one of, my bosses who I used to work with, she's Indian descent, and she's in a high leadership position. And one thing I observed that, it's not like really specific to like Indian Americans. It's more like whoever that's in leadership position and they have a great team, they give credits to their team. One thing that she did really well is she gives credits to the team and make everybody feel appreciated, highly appreciated. So whoever that works for that person loves to be on her team, getting promoted, getting appraised, So I think, I don't know if it's the Indian culture or it's just, overall like a leadership culture, like that was what was really impressive to me.
Yeah, and
go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, and what I would say about that is showing how they're engaged, right?
Mm-hmm.
They know what's going on in the team, they know the contributions, and they let other people know, right? Who doesn't want to work for someone who gives them great credit and brags about them to other people, right? We all want to work for someone like that. So that's a great example, Julia. So thanks.
Yeah. Our next question from Jay Len. So he said that thanks for the thoughtful presentation, Joe. Really inspiring. Many of the issues seem to have a deep root in our personality and culture. Could you please also recommend us some practices to improve them efficiently? Practical.
Yeah. Great
actions.
question. Really, I'm all about the practicality, right? And then so, as many of you can probably see just from my presentation, I'm second generation, was born here. So although I'm Korean American, I'm very, for lack of a better word, white in terms of my sort of upbringing and the way I can sort of blend in. And also from a language perspective, I'm like a lawyer by training, so I can sort of argue and speak with the best of them. So when I stop and think about, okay, culturally, like what if it was different, right? What if I came over when I was like 14 or 15 and I probably never would have been able to, go to law school and my English would not be as good. And that's not the most important thing. More importantly, maybe culturally, I'd be less American, right? I'd be more sort of more East Asian, Confucian type personality, right? So the thing that I would say to that is not a bad thing, right? That is actually who you are, you should embrace it, but there's two sort of details that are important about that. One is the Eastern culture or a more introverted culture is not typically preferred in a Western company, right? Western companies prefer extroverts, and they prefer more aggressive, kind of individualistic, competitive Western personality and culture, right? So neither of those are right or wrong, right? Because if a more, can you imagine like someone from America, you know, and then they go to work for a Japanese company, they are not going to do well in a Japanese company, right? So it's not that one is better than the other. It's more just a recognition that there is a difference, and depending on where you geographically are located, one will be preferred and one will not be, which leads to the second sort of wrinkle here. And thank you so much for asking this question. It's actually a very complicated question. It's so much more than like, what do I do? Like, what are like effective practices to make me more like this and that? I actually think that that is sort of starting to ask the right question, but it's not actually the right question. The right question is, how do I exhibit the 6 degrees of executive presence, those principles, right, as myself, right? So you have to think about, what does it mean for you to be proactive, right? You being proactive may not mean you barging into the boss's office and yelling at them, or constantly, you know, doing something very loud and brash. But it may mean some other way of also being proactive, setting up meetings and bringing up the point over again, very politely, sending memos, right? Asking people out to coffee, bringing it up over coffee. It could be in a much more quieter way. But you don't get to say, I'm not going to be proactive because culturally I can't be proactive, right? That's an excuse, right? You've given away all your power. And there is actually a lot of power in the way you do things. The key, and that's why I love this question, is you have to connect your power to the right principle. And it may not be apparent. You may have to really think about it. You may have to ask other people who are also similar to you but have figured out a way to manage it. You may need to get mentors to help you with that. You may need to get coaching. There's all these things you can do. But you need to figure out how to apply those principles, because those 6 degrees of executive presence, I like to explain them as principles. They're not specific things. If you notice, I didn't tell you to talk louder. I didn't tell you to stand up taller, right? Those are strategies and tactics. These are principles, right? The principle of being resolute and not changing just because your decision is unpopular, that will always be true, no matter how you do it. That will always make people think that you're more of a leader than if you flip-flop back and forth. So what I would say is there is a way. I don't have like a simple exercise or something, because it's very situationally specific. Happy to talk more with you about it afterwards. But I would say is the key, and it's such a powerful question you ask. The key is, how do you connect your culture, your personality to the principles that you're trying to deliver, and that's where the magic is, right? You'll be very powerful. You don't need to do it like other people if you figure that out.
Thanks, Joe. So I'm trying to get to as many questions as possible,
Sure.
with a few minutes left. So I'm gonna, group some of the similar questions together.
Okay.
So Tao asked, what is the significance of executive presence for entry-level job seekers? My friend told me that the leadership is not something critical to be shown on the resume. And also, Sean asked that, how is the executive presence shown in the hiring process, and how is that considered from a hiring manager side? And someone else asked about like how this is shown in the interview. So, it's all about how to showcase your executive presence or leadership when someone first met you. So if you could,
absolutely. Yeah, great question. So I'll try to keep it shorter because I know we're running to the end of our time. Apologies for that. Um, so what I would say is for interviewing or even as a junior professional, executive presence is just as important. It may feel or it may seem a little bit different to others when you're at a junior level, but fundamentally, it's the same thing that you have the ability to lead. Not lead necessarily the whole team because, gosh, you just joined the company, right? But to lead yourself, most importantly, right? Do people need to tell you what to do all the time, or can you start to figure things out and ask questions, right? That is a quality that can come through during the interview, that can come through during your first week, your first month, your first year of being an employee. And do you have the ability to lead people at your level, right? Because leadership happens across levels too, not just up and down, right? Do I want to hire someone who I just have to tell what to do and doesn't know how to help anyone at their level? Or do I want to hire someone who really has initiative and is going to be a real go-getter, figure things out, try to help their, coworkers? So executive presence, definitely important in interviewing to show some of that through stories, through the way you sort of react to things, and then very important even as a junior professional.
Okay, great. Harvey had a really interesting question, so I wanted to ask Joe.
Sure.
So he asked, what's the top reasons why our Asian professionals have bamboo ceiling? To break it, can a single person effort break it, or we have to break it by efforts from all of us together?
That's a good question, Harvey. Yeah, so what I would say to that is a single person can certainly break it. It always starts with a single person. What I would say is that person's going to need help. You're going to need those allies. And your allies often are not going to be other Asian professionals, right? Your allies may be non-Asian professionals who you're connected with and have trust and confidence in you and say, look, I want Harvey. I want this guy, right? What happens though is as we ascend and more of us are in those positions, two things happen. One, you have more people who are actually Asian who can root for you, right? And then also it becomes more normal for people to pick the Asian candidate because look, there's a whole bunch of Asian people running this business. Why wouldn't we pick an Asian, right? So that's a bit of a process. Definitely the more people that are moving in that direction together, it's more powerful. It's more like a movement. It can be difficult if you're on your own. But I guess the key is you're never really on your own. You have to build those allies. And your allies, often your most important allies, look nothing like you, right? But you need allies. You can't do it by yourself.
Right. And that ally might not be like, Asian. You need allies from all different cultures.
That's right.
Okay, Lane asked a question. As a team player, my job is to get my job done, which need a lot of head down time. So how to balance the work quality versus being proactive?
Great question, right? Yeah, some jobs, not every job is like a sales job, right? Some jobs you really gotta like crunch through and you need that focused, dedicated time and you were hired because you're really good at that, right? So what I would say is is it Lynn? We have to start thinking, Lynn, of a job is more, well, you have to start thinking of your career, not your job. Okay? So your job right now is to do a certain thing, and that's why you're hired. Your career is what you owe yourself to move up. So if you think just about your job, being loyal to your job, then what you say, I absolutely agree with it. I want to be efficient. I don't want to get distracted. I'm going to spend all my time getting the task done, and that's it, because that'll allow me to be the most productive. Great for your job. Guess what? Horrible for your career, right? Because your career happens outside of your cubicle. Your career happens by getting to know other leaders that say, hey, this Lynn person, they're really interesting. And then Lynn, you tell them, oh, I traveled to Uzbekistan when I was, younger. I really loved it. I picked up some language skills. Well, guess what? They're opening an office in Uzbekistan. Guess who they want to recommend to help open up the office, right? That doesn't happen when you're sitting at your computer not talking to anyone, right? You didn't know that was going to happen, but your career development happens outside of your role, right? You still have to do your role 100%. That's number one, right? To keep your job and for people to respect you and to think that you're a good worker. But it doesn't develop your career. Your career develops outside of your role, right? And so if you're interested in just doing a good job, then by all means, that's enough. And there's nothing wrong with just doing the same job for 15, 20 years, right? I've just as much respect for that person as the CEO. But don't tell me you want to move your career up, but you don't want to talk to anyone or take any risks or meet people or get out of your comfort zone, because it will not happen unless your dad runs the company, right?
Yep. Okay, so the next two questions, a little bit individualized, but I think, Joe, if you could give a couple of words on that.
Sure.
You need to ask, what is your suggestion to help slow down speaking? And Ben asked, how to be more assertive.
Okay. Slow down speaking. The best way to slow down speaking is not really about slowing down speaking. It's about fear and it's about perception, right? The reason why most people speak quickly is because they're nervous. And it's not because they don't know what they're talking about. And it's actually the opposite. Sometimes you know too much about what you're talking about. So you can say too much too quickly and everyone else is like, what? I'm not a technical person. Like, what are you doing, right? So the key is when you're afraid, you're constantly thinking about yourself. What's going to happen to me? Oh, what do they think? What do they think of me? How is this going to affect my career? Me. I'm worried about me. I get nervous and I talk faster. So if thinking about yourself is the problem, what do you think is the solution? I use this all the time. I still get nervous every time I speak. The solution is to think about other people. What do they need? Right? As I'm speaking, look at them. Are they paying attention? Are they engaged? Do they get it? And if they don't, guess what? I'm going to change what I'm doing because I'm worried about you, not about me, right? So that's the first thing. In terms of speaking more slowly, if you concentrate, I guarantee you, next time you have a chance to speak, concentrate intently on the other person and whether they're getting what they need from you, and you will automatically slow down. You don't need any tricks or tips or anything. You just need to shift your perspective. And then the second question, sorry, Julie, what was it?
How to be more assertive.
How to be more assertive. So what I would say about that is you have to figure out what matters to you, right? If something really, really matters to you, you will assert yourself as much as possible, right? I mean, there's other things, there's other fears and other barriers and issues and stuff like that. But at the root of it all, if something really, 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 really matters to you, then you will assert yourself beyond any fears. But if it doesn't really matter to you, your fears and the risk will always take precedence and you'll give up too early. So a superpower is actually not doing anything. A superpower is figuring out what really matters to you and doing everything in light of that, right? So if it really matters to you that you help underprivileged kids, then you're going to give someone hell who doesn't treat underprivileged kids right. But if someone is kind of mean to some, I don't know, rich person, you're going to be like, oh, whatever, I don't care, right? So to understand what's important to you allows you to assert yourself in the right way. And I think a lot of times what happens, and I put myself in this boat for over 40 years, I didn't really know what was important to me. So I just kind of went with the flow. Oh, you need me to do this? You changing my role completely? You got it, right? Because I didn't really care, right? I didn't really care. I didn't, well, not that I didn't care, like I didn't really know what I cared about, so why would I argue about it? I would just go with the flow. But when you know, you're more likely to say, can we talk about this, because this is really important to me. So if we can still make this happen, then I'm okay. If not, maybe we need to talk more about this, and then you assert yourself. So that's what I would say for assertion. Figure out what matters to you and then assert yourself around that.
Great. We're on top of the hour, but given that we're having a great conversation, I would just like to go over more questions, for 5 more minutes. And if
Sure.
Everybody who wants to hang on, you can hang on. Jennifer asked, can you talk more about stillness? I think, Joe, in your presentation, perhaps that's something that people need more examples in the stillness.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So the example I usually use about stillness is think about a reservoir, right, with water, and there's like a dam, and there's all this water behind the dam. And what does the water look like? The water is still, right? There's tremendous power in this water, but it's still. How is that possible? And how do we know that's true? We know that's true because when you open the dam and let the water come down, you do not want to be standing in the path of that water, right? So stillness is sort of the opposite side of the coin of action, right? You cannot have one be effective without the other, right? So the other example I use is you have to give people time to absorb things, right? If you are talking to someone and you don't take a breath, there will be no power to that. And here's a fun example you can try. Try this, okay? I want everyone to try this. It really works. It's crazy. So say to someone the next time, say, oh, this really interesting thing happened to me, This really interesting thing happened. The other day, and just stop talking for like 3 or 4 seconds and just watch. That stillness is powerful. It draws people in, right? And they're like, oh my God, what happened? And when you finally tell them, they're like, oh man, I can't believe it. But imagine the opposite. Imagine if there was no pause, no stillness. This really interesting happened to me the other day. I was walking down the street and no impact, right? Because I haven't even given you a chance to understand what's going on, right? So stillness is sort of the sister, the cousin, the other side of the coin of action. You need to understand the timing and the balance of both. People who are just doing stuff all the time, they seem powerful, but they're not actually operating at their most powerful ability. Hope that helps.
Okay. We have one last question.
Okay.
Joe, so Pasley asked, I was wondering if you have any real life cases to share with us, like how did someone who lack of confidence finally acquire the ability of executive presence? Any tough problems along the way?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of my clients that I was coaching had to have a talk with their CEO, and they were really worried because they were worried that their CEO was going to blame them for something that had gone horribly wrong, right? So we worked on that together, and the importance was that it was almost like my client was being set up. They wanted them to react in a certain way and to get angry and to fight and to defend and argue because they had more ammunition, right? The whole executive team wanted to pile on and blame this person. And so what I said to them is the CEO is going to expect you to act a certain way, right? Like you're not confident, like you're defensive, like, oh, I'm being attacked. What you need to do is go in and don't give them that. You need to be calm, relaxed, listen to what they're saying, right? And don't let that make you crazy, and just say, I really appreciate you telling me this. I want to do a good job. Here's my perspective. I'm not sure if you got the whole picture, because people are talking about my client to the CEO outside, right? So they don't know what the CEO is thinking, right? So I said, that's the only way you can survive the meeting. If you go in and you just argue and you get defensive and you act like you're worried about your job, you will get killed, right? So they took the advice, they did it, they called me afterwards. They were like, the meeting didn't go 100% great, but it went so much better than if I had just gone in there and tried to make excuses. I could tell that they were really like confused when I didn't act like all scared and fight back. So yeah, this stuff really works if you apply it. It really works.
Okay, thank you, Joe. If there's one last thing you would like this audience to take away from tonight's session, what would it be?
Yeah, so my closing comment in terms of what I wish people would take away is that your executive presence sets the ceiling for your career. It's not the bamboo ceiling, it's the executive presence ceiling. And we know those Indians, they've burst through the bamboo ceiling because they figured out executive presence. So there's nothing stopping us based on the way we look, what country we're from, our accent, how good our English is. That is not important. You don't see those in the principles of executive presence anywhere because they don't matter. And Julie, if I could, I just want to ask people for one favor. I have a new Slack community that I just started, free community, where we talk about these things and we support each other. It's called Unlock You. If you go to my website, www.connectioncounselor.com, you can get the link to join the community. Would love to see you there. We're growing, not as fast as you, but we're growing. So would love to have you there. If you want to find out more about me, you can email me, call me, go on the website. These are my two books, Unlock Your Charisma. That's an ebook as well as an audible audiobook, Unlock Your Executive Presence. They're both available at Amazon. And I'm working on my third book, Unlock Your Connection. And then on the bottom there, I have two podcasts. You can get some good value about this principles-based career development as well, why it works, and the big lie. So we're short of time, so I won't plug those two, but check it out. You can all reach everything from my website. And if anyone's interested in talking more, and I also do personal coaching one-on-one. So I started a new program to do that in a more sort of cost-effective way for people. So if you want someone to strategize with and have a personal coach, I'm happy to talk to you about that as well.
Thank you so much, Joe. And in a normal live session, we would all like to give you a round of applause
Thank you
for your time tonight. And I also wanted to thank all of our participants in this webinar. So I hope you all enjoyed this program. And if you have any further questions for Joe or tech job community in general, please feel free to get into contact with us. And we would be more than happy to assist. So good night, everyone. We'll see you next time. Bye. Bye now.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.